prosecuting Vyacheslav Zyugainov. The plaintiff is charging that Russia did indeed show a significant improvement in its general situation from 1855 to 1900. The defendant will argue that Russia did not improve within this time period. After being sworn in, the plaintiff and the defendant may be seated. I'll hear the prosecution speak first.
Thank you, Your Honor. While it is apparent that in 1855 Russia was in a bad place politically, diplomatically, economically, and even socially, there was a definite improvement over the 45-year period that followed in each of these areas.
Is the prosecution able to provide any specific examples, or will he only make generalizations?
Just look at the Russo-Turkish War from 1877 to 1878. One of the primary reasons that the Russian situation was considered so negative in 1855 was the outcome of the Crimean War. That war was a disaster for Russia because not only was it humiliated militarily, but ended up having their rights to a navy stripped away. The war revealed that Russia had comparatively primitive weaponry and technology, as well as tactics. The majority of the reforms in Russia that took place after this war were a result of the flaws that were revealed through it. And look ahead to the Russo-Turkish War. The fact that Russia was able to hold its own militarily in this war is a statement alone to Russia's improvement. Although Russia didn't win Constantinople in the end, its international prestige was restored.
This is powerful evidence indeed. Being able to win a war definitely shows that Russia saw significant improvement.
A very important detail has been ignored here. The principal reason for why the Crimean War was such a disaster was that basically all of Europe, all of the European powers rose up against the Russian move against the Ottoman Empire and began fighting against Russia. In this war, Russia was friendless, and it was this concern that spurred many of the reforms made by Russia in the following decade. In the Russo-Turkish War, however, which was precipitated by the Constantinople Conference, the rest of Europe still got in Russia's way and forced it to stand down before its objectives were even achieved. At the Congress of Berlin, which took place after the end of the Russo-Turkish War, some of the provisions of the original peace treaty were reversed. Essentially, Russia was still without any solid allies after this war, and in this sense, it has made very little progress towards its original goal.
Having considered this new information, the Russo-Turkish War will be deemed insufficient evidence to prove Russia's improvement.
Well, another important event to consider is the construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway. Beginning in 1891 under Sergei Witte. Clearly, a railroad connecting the far reaches of the massive landmass that is Russia can be viewed as progress. Railroads mean industrialization, and an industrial nation is a powerful and modern one.
Strong evidence indeed.
Yet again, a critical piece of evidence has been overlooked by the prosecution. That's right. While the railroad is impressive, it is crucial to note that in the process of its completion, Russia precipitated a conflict with the powerful nation that is China, who took over an entire section of rail in Manchuria indefinitely from Russia, who could do nothing about it. Even as Russia progressed economically with the railroad, it lost ground diplomatically. And it's not like the railroad even solved all of Russia's economic problems. From 1874 to 1900, Russian labor policy in the coal and steel industry was shaped by chronic labor shortage and poor relations between government and industry. Tell me, is that progress?
It seems to me that the progress is balanced out by the loss once again. Is that all the prosecution has to present?
A key problem with Russia's structure after the Korean War was the fact that its serf militias were inferior to the free armies of Britain and France. Now, to remedy this issue, the practice of serfdom was abolished under Alexander II in 1861. This shows a definite step towards a more modern Russia.
Regardless, by the end of the 19th century, Russian peasants remained isolated and particularistic, unintegrated culturally or politically into anything resembling a nation. They were uninvolved with Russia as an empire, and instead cared only for the local agendas.
Does the prosecution have any other evidence to give at this time?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Then we shall now hear from the defendant.
The facts speak for themselves. One figure who did make progress towards advancing Russia was Tsar Alexander II, who reigned for the first half of the period under examination. He emancipated the serfs and reigned during the Russo-Turkish War, among other contributions. Yet, in March of 1881, he was assassinated by the Radical Populist Party, clearly showing that the amount of turmoil and dissatisfaction in the empire, even at that time, was immense. It appears that many Russian citizens had differing views on what progress was. And additionally, how can a nation improve with that kind of division? He was succeeded by Tsar Alexander III, who at once started to revert some of his progressive policies. Again, how can anyone consider this to be an improvement in Russia's situation?
Well, I certainly can.
The facts speak for themselves. The Russian method of keeping pace with the rest of Europe, socially and economically, relied on borrowing their customs and innovation. This includes the Russian education system. Big surprise. After the calamity that was the Crimean War, Russia clearly needed to reform its education system to create a more advanced and intellectual society. Dmitry Tolstoy, the Russian Minister of the Interior from 1866 to 1880, and one of the most influential men in the government, centered his policies on keeping the Russian education system traditional, especially backwards, through the use of censorship and handing over education to the church. Of all people, the church. This kind of influence is the very opposite of progress.
I must agree. At this time, does either party have anything else to add?
No,
Your
Your
Honor.
Honor.
Is the jury ready to decide who's guilty? And I am ready to give my ruling. There simply was not enough evidence on the side of the plaintiff to solidify his case. What evidence he did present was effectively refuted by the defendant and proven to be merely circumstantial. On the other side, the defendant gave much solid evidence to prove his side, and therefore the only logical choice I can make is that Russia did not show much significant improvement in the period from 1855 to 1990. Both parties may now be excused. Law and order.